How's it going? I am here. Howdy. Welcome to the Seas of Vodari setting, and we're going to be doing. This is my second only D&D 5e solo thing, so I'm gonna. It's still an experiment, but this is a setting that I helped crowdfund, and this is going to be an adventure that's in the quickstart. And so it's kind of a preview of the full book. It's not everything, and it's not necessarily exactly the setting as it will appear in the book, but it's a start, and it's something fun to do. So welcome, howdy. I I don't even know where to begin. Where do we start? Why don't we go ahead and I'm actually going to switch over to the menu screen here. The the Seas of Vodari quick start guide is something that was sent to backers, and it's you can pre-order it right now in the description of this video on after it streams and on YouTube will have links to Vodari. You can just do a search using your search engine of choice to look it up. But this is the quick start guide. And I want to just sort of invite you into this world. It's a sort of swashbuckling and sorcery setting. You can see from the cover that there's things, there's pistols and there's creatures. And it's set, on the high seas and all sorts of stuff, and there's all kinds of fun adventures. The history, so the world is called Vodari, and these are the Seas of Vodari. Most of the species have their own origin myths, but this is one of them. Before time existed, there was only an unending sea and dreaming gods that sat in darkness for an eternity. The twins Teva and Vessi were the first to wake from the long dream. Quickly tiring of each other, they roused their younger siblings, Tero, Okiana, Sindari, and Obori. Tero created the sun so he could see the world. Vessi preferred the darkness, retreated to the side of the world far from Tero. Teva, worried about her twins' mischief, asked Tero to create the moon from a piece of the sun. To light the dark half of the world. Tero did as his sister asked, setting the sun and the moon to cross the sky each day. Vessi was outraged and retreated to the deepest and darkest part of the sea. Okiano spent his time watching the ripples and waves in the seas. Eventually, finding the sea too flat and boring, he churned the waters with currents and storms. When Sindri and Obori awoke, they both thought it would be a good idea to create something to swim around in the seas. Together they fashioned an endless variety of flora and fauna out of rock and clay from the seafloor. The creatures flourished and filled the waters. Most of the gods were happy to leave the amusing creatures alone, except for the twins Teva and Vessi. Looking down on the world, Teva became fascinated by a group of good and industrious creatures who built beautiful cities of coral spires. She called her chosen the Varu, and loved them as she would her own children. Vessi had found her own playthings, the daiquiri, to torture in the deep waters where the light did not reach. Vessi taught her dark ones pain and hate and unleashed them to hunt her sister's playthings. Teva trained the Varu in warfare to defend themselves, and they were able to fight off the daiquiri. This enraged Vessi, who awoke her brother Scatho to lead her army of daiquiri in an attack against any who would not submit to her rule. The seas filled with war, devastating the Varu and their beautiful homeland. This saddened Teva, who cried enough tears to make the sea salty. The daiquiri suffered their own heavy losses, retreating to the darkest depths. All the fighting and destruction awoke the slumbering Vulcan. In a fit of rage for being woken, Vulcan pummeled the sea floor so hard that the fire beneath spilled out, creating the continent of Veranu. And as the land cooled, Sindri carved mountains and valleys, and Obori covered the land with trees and flowers. Hey, hey, be nice. Thanks for interrupting my story. Blot and Moo. Blot and Moo fighting. Wrestling. And yeah, Tarot invited any creatures who wanted to leave the sea to do so and find a peaceful life on land. Over the following millennia, the sea creatures who crawled onto the land became the people of Vodari. So that's one of the origin stories of this land, and obviously there's tons of history in the book and things that I'm not going to necessarily cover directly, but that's just a glimpse. Let me show you what the world looks like. So this map has actually been updated a couple times, but this is the map that I currently have. And it shows that there's this huge sort of vast whirlpool sort of in the center. God, I can't even see it. Where is it? So yeah, sort of stormy whirlpool in the middle, surrounded by a bunch of islands. Now, so somewhere on this map, maybe towards the edges, I think maybe sort of in the north-ish, maybe just north of the equator, where there really isn't anything on the map, on this map. It looks like empty sea. I want to just sort of invite our focus to zoom in, like one of those distant shots coming in from the skies through the clouds, and then hovering over with the horizon, and zooming across the water, and coming to, past all the islands, into the vast open spaces, zooming in smaller and smaller and smaller, until the waves, the horizon is always in our view, but until we can see every detail of the fractals of the waves, and we zoom in farther and farther, and maybe we see, some seaweed under a Sargasso Sea, floating, and then we keep zooming and flying, and then suddenly we start to see a little dot, a tiny little dot. And no matter how far we zoom in, it still stays really, really small. And what we see is we see a little board, maybe broken off from the side of a ship, or a plank of some kind, and on it is a plant. The plant looks, I guess kind of like a marigold of some kind, like a potted plant, but without the pot, and it's sort of just growing on this plank, floating out here in the water, just floating, and then it starts to move. It's actually, we notice that it's not sitting still. We thought maybe it was blowing in the wind, but it's actually, its fronds are hitting the water, and actually paddling. This plant it turns its little flower heads and is scanning the horizon as it's paddling, and it's paddling, and it's paddling. And then, time passes, and I think we see sort of a fade out, or cross fade, to this little plant on a plank paddling in towards an island, somewhere lost at sea. And let's go ahead and get rid of this map. And I'm just going to say, so maybe there's an island, right? Um, and then there's like a reef and a Sargasso Sea floating, and we got our plant paddling in. And I think the plant, it paddles in from the distance past the Sargasso Sea, makes it across does the thing. I think we absolutely 100 and 1,000% have to have, some surf music, Dick Dale surf music, as the plant is actually surfing on this plank, onto the beach, at this island, and arrives, like this island is, imagine, I guess, sort of a cross between three things. It's a cross between, sort of, Gilligan's Island and the island in, the Tom Hanks movie Castaway. What was it? Where he was a castaway? What was it called? Castaway. Anyhow, and that island, with a huge peak and stuff, and also Blue Lagoon. Like, I mean, it's gorgeous. This is an amazing island. Super blue water. When the plant hits the beach, I think it just sort of flops over, and is just like, splayed out, exhausted from all of the work of trying to get here. And as it's laying there on this board, looking just like any other flotsam and jetsam, I think we zoom out, and on the beach, that there's other stuff, that's been washed up on shore, maybe from the same wreck as what we presume this plant, came from. Um, I think maybe what we do is we have a flashback from here to a, like a cabin, on some ship, and it's rocking, and we can hear the storm, and the waves washing, and the plant is sort of, on a table, sort of sliding back and forth, in a room that's obviously some sort of, some sort of magical, wizard's cabin. There's accoutrements and spell books and scrolls and that sort of stuff all around. And as the plant sort of, slides back and forth, and then at one point it just sort of, like, the everything tilts, and it starts to fly, and then we think it's gonna come back enough that it won't fall off, but then the potted plant teeters and then falls, and then we come back. Clearly, the ship is tilted over, and is gone, but this awakened plant was freed from its pot, as it were. Maybe some of the, potions, get, tossed on it. As we sort of see it go down, and then we see a whole bunch of other stuff get tossed down, washed on top of it. And maybe that's the point at which it awakened. But so now we're back on the beach on this island, some lost island, and I think as the plant is just sort of laying there, going, oh, finally, I really need to get to the soil, but, in a moment I'm just gonna, it's thinking to itself, and I guess it is just sort of immobilized there. We see, coming over the dune, we see a sort of a sprightly looking humanoid, medium-sized. Really can't tell, much about this creature yet, except that it sort of has a blue shape. But I think as it sits there, as it comes over the dune, I think it notices like a bug or something, or, something that it, flying around, and it suddenly changes into like the shape of a rock, and it's looking and waiting, and then this bug comes near it, and then it changes back into itself, with this bug in its hands. At this point, I want to introduce the Vodari. The Voda. Excuse me. Um, the Voda are one of the races, one of the species. You can see a picture of an obviously presenting female Voda here. So the Voda are an amphibious race, species who primarily live underwater in underwater communities along the coasts of the southern islands. So it's kind of a mystery why this particular Voda is here. They often use their innate shape shifting to hide among the other people of Vodari, and their close proximity and the curious nature of the Voda has brought them into contact with the surface world quite a bit. The Voda are an amphibious humanoid species, as comfortable underwater as on land, and they have dark-colored eyes, head tresses, and webbed hands and feet. And the coloration of their sort of rubbery skin varies from bright blue to deep purple. I think that this particular Voda, in its natural state, as we saw it coming over was sort of a slightly purpley azure. I'm thinking like the Greek blue, that really amazing Greek blue with just a tinge of purpley to it added, but really close to that. Due to the fluidity of their bodies, they have the ability to naturally shapeshift. Most Voda would prefer to travel the surface, hiding their true appearance, appearing as one of the many land-dwelling peoples. The God War created great destruction above and below the waves. In the aftermath of that God War, there's massive coral reefs grew on the ruins of the old world. And in the coastal shallows surrounding the southern islands, over the centuries, scattered settlements of Voda survivors thrived. And they hid themselves and their spired cities in these massive reefs. And really with no desire for conquest. But they do defend their land when it becomes threatened, their homes when it becomes threatened. The Voda are really curious and kind and carefree people. Treasure freedom to live as they wish. So you can imagine that sort of this is in many ways this is the apotheosis of sort of Voda ideals, is living on this beach with the ocean and being able to go into the ocean and being on the land, being on the carefree to go and do as this Voda pleases. So we're still wondering why this Voda's here. The Voda, sort of mechanically speaking, as a species, they have +2 charisma and +1 dexterity. They can reach. They have quite a range of ages. This particular Voda, who knows what age? It looks young, like a teenager. They're medium humanoid size. They can walk and swim 30 feet, breathe air and water. They have dark vision, shape-shifting. They tend to be, they're really good at persuasion, and they speak Common and Aquan. Aquan is a dialect of Primordial, so the other elemental languages are also derived out of Primordial, so everyone can sort of understand each other. Anyhow, so that's the Voda. Let's head back to the actual beach, and so now we have a Voda on the beach, and I think this particular Voda, like I said, it doesn't it presents as very non-binary. It's we don't know. Like, I mean, imagine if we sort of morphed together Brooke Shields and whatever the guy's name was on Blue Lagoon, and just sort of morphed them together when they were young. Early teens, I think. is about when we're gonna see that. I mean, that's what it presents, but there's no definite gender, um, and I think this Voda is sort of playing with this insect and then lets it go, um, and is walking on the beach now, looking at the notices the stuff washed up on the beach, and I guess this is probably a pretty regular occurrence, and then lets the insect go in order to collect whatever good stuff is here. Um, so this is Tufirlo, and this Voda is my character, and they I think as they're walking along, um, they cast prestidigitation, um, you know, f- or picking up a thing and then casts mending on something to sort of make it like it's a belt that kind of got a little bit damaged, but uses mending to mend it, and then straps the belt on. Maybe it's a shoulder belt, a bandolier, um, and finds some stuff, and maybe finds a few coins on the beach, and I think let's go ahead and say that this is the point at which they find. Yeah, no, I think, they're just finding little things. Maybe nothing special. Maybe finding a bit of seaweed and starting to like chew it like gum, I think. And then I think Tufi sees a plant laying there, and is kind of like, what? I mean, it's a marigold, right? I mean, it's a pot. It looks like it should be a potted plant. We don't know this, but Tufi doesn't actually know what kind of about potted plants, but it's out of place. Like, why is this flower plant on this plank, being sort of washed against the shore, and I think Tufi comes up to it, and just as the shadow of Tufi's head sort of comes over plant's body, I think it like wakes up and looks and is like, don't hurt me, don't hurt me, thinking maybe it's an herbivore or something is gonna, some animal is coming to eat it, and I think they both jump back and they're like, what the hell, like, the plant is like, what are you doing here, what's the kid doing here, and Tufi's like, what is a plant doing here, and Tufi's like, you know maybe says something out loud, and then the plant goes, don't eat me, don't eat me, and clearly this is an awakened plant now, and I think that plant and Tufi like slowly get used to each other, and we see a little scene where they're meeting, and maybe they like touch each other. I think Tufi like uh, starts to changes into a plant, like kind of plant like, and kind of like does a little dance to say, no, it's okay, I can be just like you, we're cool, let's hang out, and then I think eventually they get to the point where plant Tufi picks up plant and puts it on their shoulder, and then they continue their day. And I think at some point, maybe we see them walking along the way, and then in the way that some beaches have like water that washes down. I think we see sort of in the water, an octopus making its way up this little area, this little tide pool. Yeah, it's more of a tide pool, not a thing, but sort of this tide pool, and there's an octopus sort of crawling over the rocks, getting to the tide pool, crawling over the rocks, getting to the tide pool, and we're not sure what's going on exactly, but Tufi is like, oh, and then runs up to the octopus, and Plant meet octopus. Octopus meet plant. And the octopus, like, we don't realize what's going on, but the octopus is like, doing his thing, and then like sees Tufi, and I guess we sort of expect it to be just a wild octopus, but then it just sort of like pulls up some a couple tentacles and like sort of waves them in like excitement, and I think everybody just sort of great to see you. So this is Octopus, friend of Tufi. For at least this section, these are Tufi's sidekicks, and I don't know if we're gonna keep with these particular sidekicks or we're gonna. I'm not sure how this is gonna happen, but these are. I'm gonna be playing solo with Tufi, and throughout the adventure, I'm gonna have sidekicks helping out. And at this point, we're gonna have Plant and Octopus be sidekicks for Tufi. Meow. Meow. You wanna come up? Hi. Hi, Rush. Rush is saying hello. Hi, Rush. Hi. How you doing? Yeah? No, you want to stay down. You don't want to be lifted up. Okay, you sit down. So I think at this point, maybe we see them wander off. Maybe I think there's a montage of them, of Tufi sort of being a tour guide, showing the island. I think Tufi has a shack, sort of a. It's clear that Tufi is a castaway. Has built, a shanty on land, and I think at some point we also find out that Tufi has, I guess, sort of like a shanty town, like she's got they. It's a he or she. It's non-binary, totally non-binary. So I'm gonna have to get used to that. They have area on land where they do things to make food and things like that. But they also have an area that they've built under the water because they're amphibious. They go back and forth. Octopus mostly stays in the water, so when they're together at under the water, it's the octopus and Toof, and then when they're on the land, I think Plant and Toof, and I think now let's just sort of fade into like a training montage. I think we'll see Toofy, practicing just sort of natural magic. Tufi is a sorcerer, first level, so they've got this sort of natural magic, and every sort of thing that they do kind of is a little bit like when they start to do magic, maybe the sky darkens just a tiny bit, like it gets overcast, and maybe when they do something really big, there's like a lightning strike. Some coastal storm and a lightning strike in the distance. But we see Tufi practicing with the ability. There's a Siren's Lament, which is a cantrip from. I think it's a cantrip from this setting. Maybe underwater, using that to stun a fish. We see Tufi use prestidigitation to start a fire, to cook food, to boil water, to make with seaweed in it, to make a soup, and doing all sorts of stuff. I think we'll also see a montage, part of this training montage. Tufi and the octopus will be hunting together. Octopus is obviously kind of a fighter, a warrior sidekick, and they corner some big crabs or things and get some fish, and we see Tufi changing shape, and we see them both camouflaging themselves and digging into the sand, and springing traps. So Tufi's clearly good at deception and shape changing, and they've practiced that a lot, and and done it in situations where it matters. And I think we'll also see Plant and Octopus helping Tufi to gather stuff after storms. So like we see a raging storm, and we see the three of them sort of huddled and looking at the storm, and maybe just vaguely we see what might look like a shape, like on the horizon, like just a huge shape above the water, and then it's gone. But after the storm, the flotsam and jetsam washes onto the shore, and we see that montage of them sort of Plant and Octopus and Tufi sort of digging through the stuff and finding things. And we also, at this point, I think we see that, like, at one point one of the storms washes a pistol, a pistol case, because in the Seas of Vodari setting, we've got all the swashbuckly kind of stuff, including pistols and muskets and flintlocks, and so we'll see a light pistol wash ashore, and so this is when Tufi, who has proficiency in all sorcerers have proficiency in light pistol, so this is when they get the light pistol, and I think we see a montage of sort of trying to figure it out, and figuring out how to shoot it, and doing target practice and whatnot. I think we'll see another storm with more flotsam and jetsam. I think maybe this one's at night, and we see maybe like this, what looks like under the water, a hand sort of pushing some of the flotsam and jetsam towards the shore, sort of trying to help get some useful things up to shore. I think we'll also see in another daytime period, we'll see sort of a herbalism montage. So Tufi is sort of going through plants, and Plant is actually helping like identify other plants. It's kind of weirds me out when I thought of this, but Plant is helping Tufi learn what plants to pick. I mean, obviously these aren't awakened plants, but still, I mean, it's got to be a little weird, right? That this awakened plant is helping Tufi pick out herbs and things for particular usages. But we'll see Tufi make, learn how to make antitoxin, learn how to make a health potion, and that sort of stuff, as Plant sort of guides how to do herbalism, and maybe Tufi gets a scratch on their leg, and Plant helps create like a poultice, and heals that up. And then I think also at this, I guess now maybe what we'll see is a huge storm coming, like probably the biggest storm that, I mean, of any of these storms we've seen in the montages. This is a humongous one. This is like a typhoon kind of style, on as big as the horizon, from edge to edge along the horizon. There's this storm coming in, and I think as it comes in, we're going to get a flashback, and what we'll see Tufi. We'll see sort of a crossfade, and we'll see Tufi as a very young child being brought to shore by a storm giant, and then left on shore, and then Tufi sort of is remembering sort of vaguely this memory, as they're watching this gigantic typhoon storm, and it gets closer and closer. Eventually the storm hits, and we see the hurricane kind of style destruction as things are flying around. Parts of the shanty are shook and fall over, and more and more storm, and the waves coming up. And I think all of the I think the three sort of retreat. I don't, I would think that Tufi and Octopus would have retreated under the water. I think definitely, but with Plant, I think we're going to see that Tufi, Octopus, and Plant actually retreat maybe towards a sort of a natural cave that's carved out with a little lagoon, maybe uh, sort of a natural shelter that's sort of overgrown, marshy kind of as the storm. And I think things are still flying everywhere, and I think as they're sort of gathering and getting to that place, we see Tufi get like some board or one of the limbs of a tree sort of fall, and it hits Tufi on the head, and Tufi just sort of blacks out. And I think Octopus and Plant manage to get Tufi the rest of the way to that um, shelter. So I think we're gonna fade up, and we're gonna wake. Tufi wakes up with sort of blurry eyes, from the darkness of the shelter. The storm is still going, maybe even the most intense it's ever been, still. And I think we see a storm giant on the in the water, in the lagoon there. Um, um, Sort of wading back out. So it clearly had been at shore. Um, and just like when Tufi got dropped off, was brought to shore, I think. And then what we see, sort of both the past and the present sort of fade into each other, as Tufi sees this, both this memory and this sort of blurry vision of this storm giant um, leaving, turning, and sort of having a grin on its face. I sort of imagine it's kind of like Hulk's grin, just before smashing the big flying creature in the Avengers movie. That's sort of like, and then dives underneath. I think Tufi tries to get up, but is like still a little bit woozy, and then ends up fading out again. When Tufi wakes up, what we're gonna see is the destruction of all kinds of things. Things have flown around, but it's calm now and it's bright and sunny. Tufi and Plant and Octopus head out to sort of survey the damage, and I think what we see is maybe like part of a ship, like is like part of a hull has been set down like a bowl, on the up on the sand, and like right in the middle of the bowl is a big chest. Um, and I think that is going to be. Let me just really quickly. Yeah. So this chest, uh, Tufi goes ahead and opens it up, and I think what we find in it, is there like is an old journal, and a map, and the map is clearly some sort of treasury map, with an X indicating the location of an island. Um, and I think we're going to read the journal, and the journal is going to tell the story, in the voice. So this is a journal of an old sailor called Fayette, and the journal tells the story of Captain Blackheart's treasure. And this is the story that's in um, and this is the story that is in the journal that Tufi finds. Um, and Tufi apparently was part of the crew, maybe of Captain Blackheart, or heard it from a crew member. But this was the tale of an island that only shows itself at sunrise and sunset. And when a ship comes with a few miles of the island, a supernatural storm rises, pushing the ship towards the island's reef. And when Blackheart and his crew originally landed on the island, they decided to explore it and to find materials for repair and resupply. And over the days that followed, there are entries about being attacked by dangerous beasts and killer plants. And they also found an ancient ruins deep in the interior of the island, where they hid their own treasure that they had with them. Unknown to Blackheart, the ruins were actually a temple. How much of this am I supposed to actually tell? Hold on. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, no, actually, I mean, this journal tells the whole deal. Um, so, so in the journal, what it details is unknown to Blackheart, these ruins were actually a temple dedicated to Marto, the god of necromancy and secrets. And the entire island was cursed. And Blackheart soon came under the spell of Marto's whispers and decided that he could only allow his most trusted crewmates to share the treasure and know its secret location. And the captain and his officers sealed the rest of the crew in the ruins to die. And Captain Blackheart's ship, the Howl of the Sea, sailed away with a quarter of the treasure and a plan to return again when they needed more. When the pirates in the temple finally died of thirst and hunger, Mordo cursed them to undeath as skeletons. And years later, when Blackheart and his conspirators returned to collect more treasure, they were ready for the storm and landed with minimal damage to their ship. When they arrived at the temple, they were ambushed and killed by their former crewmates, and Captain Blackheart and his officers became skeletons themselves. To this day, Blackheart is always close to his treasure, counting and recounting it, never letting it leave his gaze. And the crew of skeleton pirates wander the temple and the island. Skeletons seek out anyone unfortunate enough to land on the shores of this island to turn them into skeletons as well. And so this is all in this journal, and the rest of the details, what is clear is that Fayette, who wrote this journal, was actually Blackheart's navigator and actually escaped the temple during the skeleton attack. And he built a small ship from the Howl of the Sea. He built a small ship from the Howl of the Sea? Well, so he either stole a ship or he used pieces of it that was left behind anyhow, so that he could sail alone, and even made off with a small fortune. And on the journey home, Fayette recorded all of those adventures in this journal and drew the map so that he could find the island again. And he also decided to avoid the pirate islands and try his hand as a legitimate businessman in Port Zavo and Zavros. And the dates on this journal are basically half a century earlier. Although Tufi wouldn't necessarily know that as a castaway, Tufi really doesn't actually know much of anything. But so what's obvious is that this storm giant who rescued Tufi has left this on shore as an offering to Tufi. And I think that this is sort of the call to adventure. Um, and I think, at first Tufi's like, but I don't want to leave, and keeps it. But I think what we find out over the next little bit is that less and less Flotsam and Jetsam show up. That the storm giant has stopped pushing things to shore. So, it's a little less hospitable, a little less friendly. Maybe the storm giant was controlling it, the area, and making it calmer most of the time, and so it's more stormy and less sunny. And I think eventually what happens is Tufi realizes that it's time to pack up and head out on this adventure and trying to figure out what this message, what this means. And at this point, I think I'm going to go ahead and fade out, and this is the end of the prologue. I'm going to just sort of describe really briefly the sort of mechanical details of Tufi. So we'll start the regular adventure next time, and I have to decide what to do about the sidekicks. I kind of want to keep them with me, but I might let them go. I'm not sure if I should leave them on the island. Like, is this home island going to be sort of the home that we left behind, or are we leaving it behind forever? I think we do sort of a preparation for travel montage, and we'll discover next time how that sort of pans out. But so as we go forward, Tufi is Tufirlo, sorcerer level 1, backstory of Castaway, strength 8, dexterity 16, constitution 14, intelligence 10, wisdom 10, charisma 16, and I use point buy to arrive at that, plus the species bonus of +1 dex and +2 charisma. And so we've got proficiency bonus of 2 at first level. We're proficient in constitution saves and charisma saves. And we've got proficiency in athletics, deception, insight, persuasion, and survival. Passive perception is 11. And we speak Common and Aquan. And again, Aquan is sort of a dialect. It's the water dialect of Primordial. We're proficient in Herbal Kit, water vehicles, daggers, darts, slings, quarterstaff, light crossbow. And because this is Seas of Vodari, we're also proficient in pistols. Our armor class is normally 12. If we cast shield, it's 17. Our speed is 30 on land, 30 on water, so we won't see any disadvantage for underwater combat. Our current maximum HP is 8. And that's with our constitution bonus and the basic die. We're a sorcerer, so our hit dice are 1d6 currently. We have, well, I wrote down light crossbow, but we're gonna replace that with the pistol that we found. So no light crossbow. So we've got some kind of arcane focus. I figure it's maybe it's a something that washed up on the sea. Maybe I'm not entirely sure. Explorer's pack, 2 daggers. We made antitoxin and a healing potion with our herbalism kit. We probably got some gold from this chest, but and maybe we've collected some. Tufi is Voda, and I'm thinking we're probably chaotic good, sort of that individualism met with sort of towards the greater good. And we're non-binary, we're medium humanoid, amphibious, dark vision 60 feet. We can shapeshift, and our DC to be detected with that is 8 + 3, so 11 currently. we have a sorceress origin of Storm Giant. And because of our castaway background, we can create food and water when we're in the wild, or we use half as much food and water when we're in the natural environment. We can create 2 rations per day when we're moving at normal pace. And we don't, when we're in the wild, we don't drain our water skin. We constantly replenish it. Our spellcasting DC is 13, and our proficiency, our attack bonus for spellcasting is +5. And so I selected the following spells: Mending, Siren's Lament, which is one of the spells in the book. Here's Siren's Lament. It's an evocation cantrip. Oh, sorry. Actually, let me show you. It's an evocation cantrip. It's an action self in a 15-foot cone. You imbue your voice with the lamenting cry of an anguished siren. Each creature in a 15-foot cone must make a Constitution saving throw, and a creature takes 1d4 thunder damage on a failed saving throw and suffers disadvantage on the next Intelligence or Wisdom ability check or saving throw made before the beginning of your next turn. And we can increase that over time. So that's specific to this setting. That's one of the new spells that they created. And Prestidigitation and Firebolt, and then from our Sorceress Origin, we got Shocking Grasp. First level spells, I have 2 slots, and I took Shield and Magic Missile, and then from our Sorceress Origin, I get Thunder Wave. And that is pretty much the character. I did take the background Castaway, and I think the origin really is that Tufi woke up with no memories of how they arrived on this island, except for now we've revealed that it was the storm giant that had carried the youth. We don't know what happened before that. Were they, traveling together as a group? Tufi and some other Voda. My cats are going crazy. Were they traveling but got separated? Why were they in this area instead of like the southern parts of the ocean? We don't know. That's going to be some history to figure out. For personality, I think Tufi is far more comfortable around animals than people. And I think that Tufi is constantly maybe picking up stuff and looking at it and sort of like testing it to see if it's good for stuff, sort of being that sort of thrifty castaway. I think Tufi's ideal is nature is a sort of that the natural world is more important than civilization. That probably won't really develop until we see Tufi interact with civilization. But I think also life is like the seasons, and there's constantly change, and you've got to change with it a little bit to be adaptable because of the storm and the island. But at the same time, like cyclical time is something that Tufi's really used to. I think the bond for Tufi is that an injury to the unspoiled wilderness of their home is an injury to them. And I think that their flaw is... I couldn't decide really on their flaw. I wrote down, I'm slow to trust members of other races, tribes, and societies. And I think that that's true as long as it's not like an animal or plant or something like that. I think Tufi's like totally into that. But when Tufi's going to meet people, we're going to be really slow to trust people. But at the same time, I think Tufi has sort of learned to test themselves against the environment, against nature. That you have to keep trying without, and that caution just isn't going to help you survive Like there's healthy caution, and then there's caution that stops you from doing the thing that's going to improve your life. And I think that that's something that maybe Tufi is a little bit too incautious when it looks like there's progress to be made. So tries a little hard, a little too hard. And I think maybe we also have in our possession a tiny mechanical fish that can swim that got put on, part of the flotsam. I think there's a small sea conch that you can hear like singing somehow. And maybe it's the "Blow the Man Down" from the intro music that's playing as the calm beach is in the distance. And I think Tufi has maybe like a bag of shark's teeth and sea glass and other little bits of not valuable to anybody else but them kind of stuff with them. And currently, I'm going to be playing solo with the 2 sidekicks, and the sidekick is going to be that octopus who's probably a warrior. I was thinking expert warrior, but we'll find out. And then the sidekick, I started to think it was a carnivorous plant, but we're going to do an awakened plant. And I think probably healer is going to be what the plant is. Maybe expert or healer. And so that is the character that I'll be playing. And we're going to find out next time what happens and which of the sidekicks goes on the journey with Tufi, and we'll go from there. So that was the introduction to Seas of Vodari. I hope you'll join me for the rest of the episodes through this introductory adventure, and I will see you next time.